The second question is about a verse in Surah Al-Kahf. It says سيقولون ثلاثة رابعهم كلبهم ويقولون خمسة سادسهم كلبهم رجما بالغيب ويقولون سبعة وثامنهم كلبهم.
That's right.
He wants the meaning.
You see, this verse is a very important verse which relates to the early history of Christianity, where Christians were persecuted on land, those Christians which believed in the unity of God. They were persecuted even by other Christians, and persecuted alike by Romans as well. So these Christians were left no room on earth, on the surface of earth. So repeatedly they had to go down into the caves and find shelter there. And we have discovered those caves, and I have seen some of them myself, where they used to live in darkness, having lamps, of course, but no sunlight penetrated there. And they were also sometimes compelled to be buried there, because on the narrow streets they dug within, under the earth. On the sides you can still see the qubur, the graves, which they built sideways, one after the other. Because there was no open space, there was shortage of space, they couldn't bury their dead on plain earth. So what they did was, they did it on the walls. These are the people who are being talked about. Now, ordinarily people, the commentators, think that it is the total number of such people. Either 3 and 4th was the dog, or the 4 and the 5th was the dog, or 7 or the 8th was the dog. The Holy Quran, mentioning this view of the common people, rejects it. It says only Allah knows best. So don't waste your efforts meaninglessly in discussing these matters of which you have no knowledge. So why this question at all of 3 or 4 or 5? I have made research on this issue because I was interested in finding out the true meaning of these verses. So I have discovered that there are so many different caves in which those persecuted by the people above had to seek shelter from time to time. Now these caves which you are also researching on, where are they? The caves of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Dead Sea Scrolls are recovered from caves. And there are also signs, if you read about it more, that people lived there for a long time, even they are buried there, their graves are found there, and they do not mention Trinity at all anywhere. So there are many, not one place, but more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, could be up to 7 or 8. Or even more, of which we have lost track. So when the Holy Quran says there was 3 or there was 4 or there were 5, it means 5 parties, 3 parties. Because they were definitely more than number 3 or 4 or 5 individually. They were groups which sought shelter at various times in the history. And their caves were finally abandoned when freedom was restored, and they came up and they sent somebody in one place to buy some food. And by that time the government had changed, because the note he was carrying to buy the money with, that when he showed it, he discovered that this was out of currency, this was no longer in currency. And also discovered that the people have now become friendly to us instead of our enemies. So there they built a mosque on the top of the cave. Now this is a general meaning, but what about the dog? This was their practice, to always keep a dog at the place of entrance to the cave. وَكَلْبُهُ باسطٌ ذراعہ ہے. bilwasit. So this was their practice. So that if an enemy ever got wind of the place where they lived and tried to invade them, then the dog would bark and warn them in time. So that dog was trained always to sit in the front. So they think that it is the Holy Quran means that they think there was only one party of 3 or 4 or 5 and there was only one dog involved. But Allah knows best. It is not the case. From this I got the cue, and everyone should get the cue, that Allah tells us that the matter is as yet not known to man. If you investigate further, there is the possibility that you find out what the truth is. Otherwise it was meaningless to mention and leave it unanswered. Answer was to come later on. So that is why I investigated and discovered many caves, and this Dead Sea Scroll area is also full of many caves. And the scientists have discovered that these caves were occupied at different periods, not at the same period. And the treasures buried therein do not speak of Trinity. This is the beauty of it. Whatever is found written mentions one God. So that is why the Christian scholars have been misled to believe that these people were before Jesus Christ, who lived for 200 years before, and they are the people who went into the caves. But why? They were not persecuted. Why should they leave the surface? And what happened afterwards, when the Romans invaded the Palestine and the areas around, and both the Christians and the Jews were made to evacuate those areas? Why 100 years after or 200 years after, again the caves? So the only interpretation which is tenable is the one I have offered. So far I can't think of a better explanation, that these things happened at various times. The issue of 2 or 3 or 4 is irrelevant. There are more caves than one. And dog is always involved. You see, this is a beautiful statement of the Holy Quran, and the truth of the Holy Quran becomes apparent. The same people it is who love dogs like no people on earth love. Dogs in all other countries except the Christian are just animals used for some purposes, sometimes for defense, for protection, etc., or for hunting, but they are never kept so lovingly, with such care, even in the houses, even to share the beds of people, as it is found in Christian world. It is the memory of that same dog who kept faithfully waiting at the threshold of the caves, warning them, and he would never leave that place, always patiently wait there. So this is the purpose of this whole story, that you should also recognize the type of people who they were. These habits will continue in future. So in Rome, near Rome, there are also caves. And in those caves I have also visited, gone down and seen no sign of Trinity whatsoever. That's the beauty of this. So they had to be Unitarian Christians who were persecuted and occupied those caves. I said the scholars, because of this, believe that they had to be Jews who did it prior to the time of Hazrat Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. There are two groups now. Some believe because there is no sign of Christianity inside. So they had to be the Jews, maybe the followers of Hazrat Yahya, but they extend beyond that. Who were they then? They become a great mystery. Because if Hazrat Yahya was persecuted, all right, but why are they extended back to 200 years before? So this becomes a mystery. It is not right. They accept it because they don't find signs of Trinity in the caves. So they attributed to the Jews. Why Jews? What for did they do it? They were enjoying life on the surface of the earth without any fear. So this has to be the followers of Isa alayhi salam, but they believed in one God like Jesus Christ believed in one God. That is why there are no signs under the caves. Now, as far as the question of their being monotheists, believing in one God is concerned, if we read the Surah Al-Kahf right from the beginning, it becomes very apparent as to who were the people of the caves. فَلَعَلَّكَ بَخْرٌ نَفْسَكَ عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمْ. Because I read A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem in my heart before, so sometimes the Arabs generally want to hear it aloud. So that is why some may think I don't read. I always read. I'm telling you this. أَفَحَسِبَ الَّذِينَ فَلَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمْ إِن لَّمْ يُؤْمِنُوا بِهَٰذَا الْحَدِيثِ أَسَفًا. From here it begins. إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا مَا عَلَى الْأَرْضِ زِينَةً لَهَا لِنَبْلُوَهُمْ أَيُّهُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا وَإِنَّا لَجَاعِلُونَ مَا عَلَيْهَا صَعِيدًا جُرُزًا أَمْ حَسِبْتَ أَنَّ أَصْحَابَ الْكَهْفِ وَالرَّقِيمِ كَانُوا مِنْ آيَاتِنَا عَجَبًا إِذْ أَوَى الْفِتْيَةُ إِلَى الْكَهْفِ وَقَالُوا رَبَّنَا آتِنَا مِن لَّدُنكَ رَحْمَةً وَهَيِّئْ لَنَا مِنْ أَمْرِنَا رَشَدًا. These are the people of the caves which are mentioned following in that verse which was quoted. It's obvious that why should a people leave the beauty on the surface of the earth and prefer to live like animals, like rodents in the caves? They did it for the sake of Allah. And isn't it ajab? What a beautiful story that is. A people prefer to go under the caves, live under the caves, and leave the beauty of the surface of the earth which God had created, because they couldn't keep their unity, their belief in unity. And then this is the meaning, وَإِنَّا لَجَاعِلُونَ مَا عَلَيْهَا صَعِيدًا جُرُزًا. A time would come when their surface beauty will be destroyed by God. And this is the end all for them. And this is a time which was going to come, not immediately, but after a while you will see. When during the third atomic war, many a country will be left Juraza. So these are interrelated things. So when I inferred that they had to be the Muwahideen who went into the caves, tortured and persecuted by others, this is obviously the meaning, right? But he tells me the time is over. Can we? Right? Okay. Translate it, please. Every time, first of all, every time it's not necessary. Once you begin tilawat, then the same Auzubillah works, in the same sitting. But I always, for the sake of cautiousness, what you say, caution, I always do it before that. This right. And I said the last verse, Ablana miladunka, Atina miladunka rahmatum, wa hayya lana min amrina rashada, means that they were the monotheists. They wouldn't accept any favors from anyone but God. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. He's doing very well.